Alright, so hello, and we are live for our new and improved amateur tournament here. And I am really grateful and very happy to announce as my co-cast today, Blue.
Hey, what's going on?
Thank you very much for coming. I hope you're excited to see some sort of mid-tier EU play here.
Yeah, well, looking forward to see how things go. Looking forward to jumping in and checking stuff out, I guess.
So to start with, we'll jump straight into builds. Really, is probably the easiest way. So I'll go over red, you go over blue. Quickly, I should mention as well, just to say, there are a few changes coming to the tournament. At the minute, we are Saturday nights and bi-weekly. Both those things are changing. We will be moving to weekly, and we will be moving to Mondays. So that would make our next tournament Monday the 23rd. And I'm 99% sure, I'll have to double check, but I'm 99% sure we will be opening it up to more teams as well. We had a bit of an issue today where we only allowed 8 teams to check in, but for some reason Battlefy let 11 teams check in anyway, which kicked 3 random teams out which we didn't really want to happen. So you know, we'll be fixing that. We'll be moving on. We'll be going to a 16 plus team tournament hopefully. And a big thank you again to everybody who's helping sponsor us. We've got Metabattle's helping us out. We've got QQMore's got a banner up for us. We've got Arenanet obviously supplying us with gems. Again, you Blue for coming along. You know, talking to people like Fantaram and Chase and all that lot. Just the encouragement we've got from a lot of the top tier players. It seems like a lot of people want to see this sort of thing succeed. So first things first, we'll jump straight into builds. Like I said, I'll go over red, you go over blue, and we will start with Liber She Wrote. And we do have a Condi Necro here with the Rune of the Nightmare and the Carrion Amulet. So your sort of standard Terramancer, yet the 06404. Let me just turn my sound down a little bit. Yeah, so we do have the 06404, so you know, a lot of control there. Nightmare runes, lots of fear. Geomancy, energy sigils, so lots of dodging going on there with some hydromancy as well. Your standard Master of Terror, Greater Marks, sort of all the standard things that you expect to see. Spectral Walk, Corrupt Boon, Summon Fleshworm. Very, very powerful class when used right, but we sort of saw in the top tier with Orange Logo against the Abjured is that if he gets focused, they can go down very quickly.
Yeah, it's very much about positioning with that sort of build, so you have to make sure that you have that you're constantly defended all the time. Otherwise, it's going to be very easy for a burst player or just someone who has access to a decent amount of DPS to come in there, lock him down, and for the rest of the players that are there at the time to take him out of play.
Yeah. So then we move on to Shurio, who is running the Sword Warhorn longbow build with the Soldier Runes and the Celestial Amulet. Again, sort of same warrior build you see everywhere now. Running 00464, which I've noticed I play every now and again. I do pop onto NA and I watch some of the NA tournaments, and it does seem that the NA take 1 point out of that bottom trait line discipline and put it into strength usually. So a slightly different build from what NA tend to play with. But it works essentially exactly the same way.
Yeah, a lot of people just like to go for the reckless dodge just because destruction of the empowered is a pretty debated trait as to how effective it actually is. Even I'm sort of on the fence about it because it really only works against players that have a lot of boons.
Yeah.
But then reckless dodge is very reliable, and that actually has a pretty decent amount of DPS. So I think a lot of people just tend, including myself when I play Chapeau, just want to go for that trait instead.
Okay, and then we have, sorry, just changing more volumes. And then we have Stereo
Okay.
Electro over here on Thief. Playing, we have got a dagger pistol short bow. So you've got the pack runes of Berserker Amulet, and we are going for the 60206, which is the Panic Strike version of the build. So you've got on the characters under 50% health, you do have a massive immobilizer that's going to be able to, you know, that's going to help with the burst in terms of actually locking those guys down. Shadow's Embrace, so you've got a bit more Condi removal coming out of, you know, I say coming out of when you're in stealth, and of course all of your bog standard Thief Steel traits, which make Steel the absolute, like, just ridiculous, most overpowered skill in game. The thing is, I mean, it's like an entire chapter down there with all the things it can do. So, you know, we'll have to see how he should be moving. We do have a thief on both teams, so, you know, that's going to be an interesting duel between those two. And then we move into Dorita playing Dagger Celestial. So we've got Holbrak Celestial. I mean, so, you know, going for the slightly less damagey version with the Holbrak runes, but they will have less condition duration applied to them. So, you know, it does help them in a different way. Energy and Doom. Now, I don't know much about Ellie's, but I see this a lot in our tournaments, whereas in most of the top tournaments, I always see a battle sigil there. So I don't know whether Ellie's are genuinely dropping battle sigils more regularly now with the might nerf, or whether that's just a thing that seems to happen with our tier of players.
I think with this build specifically, what he's aiming to do with that is he's just looking to get more sustain to the build, because obviously the might stacking on the sigils would complement the runes of Hullbreaker strength that the Ellie's normally run with, and would allow them to get up to pretty reliably up to 25 stacks of might and constantly have that if the fight's going on for long enough, which in the current meta it usually does. But by going with energy, he's obviously going to be giving himself a lot more sustainability, and then he'll have the option of dodge a lot more often there too. But obviously on the opposite end of that, he won't be able to DPS as highly because he won't be constantly getting the 25 stacks of might. He'll probably be floating more around like 17 to 21 stacks.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to see how that works. You know, if they're looking for him to go, I mean, if they're looking for him to have that more sustaining role, let's hope that they have the DPS that they need coming from elsewhere. And then we've got Surliest. Okay, this is, yeah, they've got that DPS coming from elsewhere. We do have a Power Ranger. Now, you don't see this very often, and I think before, I have seen Surliest in this tournament before, and he ran a Condi Ranger at that time. So this is something different from him. And it is 66200, so it is full-on power. We've got the Read the Wind, so we've got longbow projectile velocities increased. We've got the days and stun durations in, you know, last longer. He'll move one incoming disabling condition to his pet, so, you know, a knockdown or anything like that's going to transfer to his pet once every 90 seconds. So he is full on DPS. Again, this is like the Necro, this is another class that is like 90% positioning based.
This overall, when you talk about the comp, is actually going to make the comp pretty risky, and the fact that they've got two players now on the Necro and the Ranger that are going to need to be constantly defended and looked out for, because if there's an attempt to gank them within a team fight where two or more players try to lock them down, that goal can easily be accomplished. So the remaining three players are really going to constantly have to be aware of this and be able to defend these guys, as that's going to be pretty hard for them to defend both of those players at once, because now they've got two kind of high-risk players on their team that rely pretty heavily on teammate support in order to stay alive and constantly in good position to deal DPS.
Yeah, and so that's all of red team done, I believe. Yep. So do you want to go over blue team?
Yeah, so let's jump over to the blue team real quick and check them out, starting off with, I believe it's Avvediki, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Pretty standard Dagger Celestial Elementalist. We do the battle sigils, like we talked about before. He is going to be able to reliably get 25 stacks in comparison to the Ellie on the other team, which is only going to be floating around 17 to 21. In contrast, though, he's obviously not going to have as much sustain in terms of his defensiveness due to the lack of an energy sigil, but overall, though, should still not have too much trouble holding on, as DD Selly Ellies are still very powerful in that regard. Moving over to Slycore, he is going to be playing Shot Warrior, but he's going to be playing actually, apologies, I saw Mason or I saw Axe, I think, on the build earlier there, but he's since swapped off that. So it is going to be your fairly standard Shot Warrior. Again, more support coming into the build from this, as well as a little bit more tankiness and bringing that ever so useful battle standard into the play out here as well, in order to get teammates back up if things start to go awry. Captain Naibu is going to be playing a DPS Guardian. We'll be running with the Great Sword instead of the Hammer, so a little bit more reliable DPS coming up from this build, but we'll trade that out for CC and immobilized pressure that we do see pretty often when you see players like Tate running it with the big hammer there. Other than that, though, it is going to be also the kind of Great Sword trait spread that we would expect, as he is going for Fiery Wrath instead of putting the 2 extra points into Virtues in order to get the stability stacking. We'll still get the Condi Cleanse off of the Virtue tree, but again, missing that stability might hurt the team's ability to execute stomps, but considering that they've also got 2 Ellies, shouldn't be too big of a deal. Tycee is going to be playing an interesting Thief build on the fact that he is going to be running with Venoms for the most part here, along with a Shadow Trap, but is still running with a full Zerker build. The trait split is going to be a 2-0-0-6-6 trait split here, so it's something that you would normally expect from like SD, but obviously as you take a look, there are a lot more defensive traits, and the weapon set itself is Pistol Dagger, so that'll be interesting to see how that one works out, as there's a bit of an odd dynamic there with him running what would appear to be a mainly Condi-focused layout here, but then when you take a look at the Zerker Amulet, it does seem to be that he wants to operate his power. But as you can sort of see now with him sort of warming up on one of these players, the out of stealth ability, the I don't remember the exact name of it there, but the kind of multi-shot that he does there can actually do quite a lot of DPS. So if he's able to abuse stealth mechanics here and jump in and out of it, he can deal a pretty hefty amount of DPS if he's using that properly. It's a bit hard to pull off though, so I'll have to see if he's going to be able to do that. And then of course, last but not least is going to be Elix, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
Is going to be running with your standard DD elements list once again, pretty much the same thing as Avediki. So those two, along with their warrior, are going to be acting as support, and then you've got Taisi and Captain Naivu acting as the full DPS players. No Condi really to be found on this team. Obviously, the Thief has a little bit to offer, but it won't be doing a lot of DPS because he's running with that Zerker amulet. But beyond that, this is mainly going to be your pretty standard 3 Cell 2 power build comp here, and this should work out pretty well.
Yeah. One interesting point as well here is something that I noticed on both the warriors. Obviously, you know, both very support focused, both running banners. So we do have banners on both sides, but we do have a difference in choice in shouts, with Slycore opting to take On My Mark over Fear Me, which, you know, you've got the cooldown is massively reduced. It's well over half the time less in terms of cooldown. So he's going to be able to get the heals off and the Condi clans off more regularly. But that Fear Me is so powerful when used correctly in terms of being able to lock down an opponent, or getting someone who doesn't have stability away from a stomp, or if anything that you need like that. You know, any sort of, you know, it's so powerful used in the right situations, and I wonder whether he's going to regret not being able to have that sort of control over his opponents.
I think given the rest of the team comp, it actually works out pretty nicely when you look at the fact that they've got 2 power-focused other players. With On My Mark being brought into play, obviously the 10 Vuln stacks is going to be nicer if they go for an opening engagement, especially out of stealth or something like that. So it works out. Obviously, Shui is still a very good utility, and 9 out of 10 warriors would choose to take that, but I think it still works out pretty well given the dynamic of the team composition.
Okay, we'll just get these guys to ready up and we'll get straight into game 1, please. Ready up.
I should also make a slight correction, as I did misstate something. I looked at LX and I saw an offhand that looked like a dagger, but in fact it's not a dagger. So it's actually dagger focused elements list instead of daggers. That's my fault there. But yeah, dagger focus should still pretty much fulfill basically the same exact role that a DD would. It provides a little bit more AoE support for the team with things like Swirling Winds coming into play that Power Ranger and some of the other players on the right side might have a little bit more trouble operating. The biggest effect it's going to have is going to be on Surlius, but beyond that, it still pretty much performs the same exact role that a dagger would be doing.
It's going to be very interesting to see whether they're going to be moving Alex here into any fight that Surlius turns up into.
Yeah, he'll probably be the main team fighter, and Avediki will be hanging out on the side nodes, or I'll just keep both of them in fights. It's going to be very similar to the dynamic that the Abjured often runs with, where they'll just keep one Ellie as a side node pusher, and the other one will be in the team fights. More than likely, it'll be Alex in the team fights.
Alright, so the game will be starting in just a few seconds here. We are still running the regular rotation with Forest, then Legacy, and then onto Kylo if we need it. And we look like we're going to have a fairly aggressive split here from Blue. They look like they're pushing 3 guys across, while Red are going for a full 5-man defensive. That look like they're going to push. Yeah, we do have a stealth up from Blue here. Stealthing across, they can't seem to make up their mind. No cross from anybody in the end, and we do have, it looks like we're going to have a massive team fight breaking out here in mid.
Tyce's also completely changed his build as a side note now too, so it's a standard sword dagger build. And so thankfully that was the case, as the build he was running with full dagger was throwing me off a little bit, but now that he's got his sword dagger build, it's obviously a little bit more normal, and we'll probably see him perform a lot better too with him running that sort of build. That's actually going to be really annoying for the red side now too, as the harassment from this build is really annoying to deal with. You can see evidence of this right now. He's just running around trying to get away, and there's just no damage connecting onto him at all.
We do immediately have a decap here from Avateki, bringing, you know, coming over towards mine, getting that decap. So we are going to get, he's even going to get the full cap out here. So we are going to have a very early full cap from Don't Know What to Do over here on Forest. And they are holding their own in mid as well. They do have Surliest up here, and Slycore is getting focused. So, you know, chances are they're going to lose this team fight. But they've got the side points now.
Yep, Alex is not going to be having a good time here. You can see 3 players focusing him down. Regardless of what you're running there, that's going to be very low chances. But we do see an attempt at a banner coming out from Slycore. It did get interrupted, unfortunately, so that doesn't go up. But there's a hard res coming up. Not sure if that hard res is going to be the best option, and thankfully Avediki realizes this really early, so he jumps off the course before things get too ugly. He's still going to try to hold off what's now a 1 versus 2, I believe, here. And he can probably hold it off for about another 15 to 20 seconds, maybe 10 if these CCs are connecting well enough here from the red side. But he'll be able to delay the cap for just a little bit longer. longer, then eventually it will go into the hands of the red side. But as you can see there,
Drop
blue
some
team also
point.
look like they may resurge their push. So it's going to be up to
Red
them
team are
to see
going to
what
get
they wanna do.
decaps. Red team are going to get decaps on both side points and take mid cap now. So this match is going to swap straight back over in favor of Succulent Sensations here, and it's all about where red team push to reinforce. We do have a 2-man push from blue here with Slycore and Ticey pushing in towards Henge. Well, we also have a 2-man push over towards mine as well with Niveau and is that Alex yet taking on Stereo Electro here. So again, we got another team fight breaking out here.
Yeah, and this was kind of blue team's own fault there. They pushed way too aggressively when they tried to go for that mid node there after they had already cut the side nodes. They kept no one to defend either one of those nodes, and that really bit them in the butt. Thankfully, they're wrestling back control of it pretty nicely, but they are going to have to get through another big team fight if they want control of the mine back, which fully, at least for now, seems to be going okay. But with Naivu now in the downstate and reinforcements still at least 5 seconds away, it might get a little bit rough here if they lose Naivu, as they're going to lose a lot of their DPS.
Surliest as well being allowed to freecast here from the ledge up here is just... You know, Liber's up there, joined above top as well, just, you know, wanting away from up
Alex
there.
needs to get that swirling winds out there, and he's not really able to do that. I think we just saw Vedeki go down here too once his vapor form expires. Alex, both their Ellie's are gone, so that's all their support. The only player left is Ticey. Can't do much, so they're going to lose this one. A bit of an over-rotation is going to give the red team an advantage now, as they'll take the 2-cap. The mid 1v1 fight won't be going anywhere anytime soon, and with the red team obviously having a much higher numbered reinforcements coming into that point in just a second, they shouldn't have any trouble defending that point, and blue team is going to have to take a step back now and decide what they want to do to make another resurgence of a comeback.
Yeah, Slycore is in fact pulling off the point with Stereo Electro coming in there as well. Niveau has come in to back him up, but with both their Ellies down and only just respawning, they're really going to have to sort of look to regroup. They don't want to be feeding into points one at a time here. They have got Liber down though.
Yeah, a little bit of an overextension though, so they've got to watch out for those sort of things here. Overall, I think blue team just decided to throw themselves back into the fight. Not sure if red team was expecting such a big comeback all of a sudden there. I thought they were going to take some time to regroup and maybe push far, but with them sort of zerging into mid here, I don't really think Liber was really ready for that, and that obviously bit them in the butt pretty hard there too.
Stereo there just nearly got in a lot of trouble there. Went in for a res on Liber, I think. It came out with 800 health, but he has stayed up, and they have actually managed to take out Ticey again. Although in that team fight, Alex has managed to go and get very close to getting the full cap. Shurio is going to get on to stop him, but he has managed to at least get the decap, so we are back to just 1 point ticking for each team. And red are still less than 7 points behind now, so they are still well in this. And in fact, Slycore's gone and got a decap on mine as well, so they are currently the only point ticking.
Not only this, but we're going to see Stereo once again go over there towards the Henge in just a moment. He'll be able to get another decap. The mid is looking like, at least for now, mid is actually still very much up in the air because you've got both the Ellies hanging out there. And that's not necessarily a good thing to have both the Ellies hanging out in mid, because now they've got no support at Farpoint. And Farpoint's probably going to go back to the red side here pretty quickly, as Slycore cannot hold on forever. And you're already going to see him retreating. But they've definitely got enough people there to where they could stalemate that engagement. We're just going to have to wait and see how they choose to push this as we get later into the fight. As right now, it's pretty much a completely even map. No one has a huge advantage.
And we do have Alex gone down there. He's going to go down with Ticey's got the Shadow Refuge down, so that's going to get Alex back up again. So that keeps this team fight going on in mid. We do have Avateki in here as well. Surliest has dropped as well. He is getting hard rest, so he's going to get up. But Liber is going very low at the same time. In fact, he's had the Plague there as well, isn't he? So, you know, he's getting focused very heavily on this point.
Yeah, there's some really nice support coming out here that I'm noticing from the red side at the moment, but for blue team, they do have to be a little bit careful. I'm noticing, this is their biggest problem so far for the blue side, is that although they are in the winning position, they are being really overly aggressive, in my opinion. Like, they're being a little bit too aggressive, like they're pushing their Ellies completely into overextended positions when everyone on the red side's full health and things such as that. So although that's working for now, if we see the red team catch on to this and start to react towards that, that could actually turn pretty ugly, so they just got to be a little bit careful of that. Red side, though, still lacking a little bit in the team fight, so I think for now, while blue team is being a little bit overly aggressive, it is somewhat warranted given how the red team is lacking just a little bit in their ability to team fight.
Surliest has dropped off point here as well. Dorita's going to come in, try and stop the death, but they're not going to be successful. And Ticey and Dorita, I thought it was going to be a 1v1, but Niveau has followed in as well. So we do have a 2v1 on this point with Liber coming in, so it will break into a 2v2. But Dorita's not going to stay alive very long there with that much DPS focusing them.
Liber's on the way. Doubt Liber's going to be able to change the tide of battle here. Ticey should have enough pressure to get in and get out there without taking too much DPS, but actually I might be a little bit wrong in that, as it seems that Ticey is going to get killed out here as Surliest will reinforce there. Power Ranger will make some quick work of Ticey to take him into the downstate, and then Captain Naivu, and it looks like the rest of the blue team as well is just going to decide that it's not worth continuing the fight and try to piece out if there's red team takes control. Blue team did get full control of the midpoint though, and it's not looking like that's going away anytime soon, as once again they have both the elementals camping on that midpoint, so it's going to be a very hard push to take that away. And not only this, but they've scored yet another kill onto the blue side here as Captain Naivu goes down. So this will actually be pretty good for the red team now, as yes, they do have both those Ellies back on mid, but there's literally like no other pressure, so they can easily just go into mid, and there's nothing to worry about in mid right now, as both the DPS players are dead. The only thing they would have to remotely worry about is the Shalpo, and that's not going to be a lot of DPS. So if red team pushes hard enough here, they've only got about 15 seconds to pull it off. But
yeah, Alex has dropped already, and Avateki is very close to dropping himself as well. In fact, Avateki does go down, so you're right, both Ellies gone already.
They did overextend there a little bit too much though, as Ticey there coming off respawn. They took I would say they wasted a little bit too much time trying to go for that kill onto Captain Naivu. Because of that, they gave Ticey the time to respawn and wrap back around over there to the waterfall. It was good to go all in on mid when you knew there wasn't any DPS pressure, but you've really got to keep in mind the back point there, as they did pretty much give that one up for free. It's going to be locked in a 1v1, and I don't Ticey can eventually win this fight. It's going to be very long, like more than likely the winner of mine will be like the first person to give up or the first person to get teammates reinforced it, but still this could have been a completely unavoidable situation, as if they just kept Arita there in the first place, they wouldn't have really had to worry about getting kicked at their home node.
Yeah. So we do have again, we've got fights breaking out on every point here again, except mid. They are keeping mid, but they do have Liber keeping that point, so he's not doing any pressure on any other point in any of these team fights, which is as you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's a terrible misuse of his abilities. But Jurita again is in a 2v1 here against Ticey and Slycore, so this you have to feel, although Liber is coming in, so they are leaving mid decap, so you have to wonder whether Ticey is just going to go and get their decap again on their free point. Jurita's going to drop. They are as well red team here. Blue are going to want to keep red team in this fight on Henge because they own this point and they've got both Ellies there, so they've got all of the sustain they need. Red team, red team aren't going to win this unless they can start focusing very heavily.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say this, and I was like, I think they learned their lesson last time with the back cap on mine, but it seems not. As I was gonna say, the move off of midpoint, and so long as they because they knew where everyone was, so there wasn't gonna be a risk of a decap here in mid. But unfortunately, they weren't keeping tabs on Ticey, and he sort of just snuck away once again. So pretty much as you predicted, they're gonna be able to sneak in there and get another decap. But yeah, always gotta be watching out for decaps, and you've always got to keep counts of the players because now that has cost them pretty heavily. We've got that reinforcement coming in from Shirio, and now we will not see Ticey get that free cap there unless he gets reinforcements from his teammates. But yeah, always gotta be careful.
Nivo is in on Shirio as well, so they should get this cap now. It's one tick away, I believe, but Liber is coming in, so it's all about whether Liber can get in here quick enough to help. But you know, he's not going to be much use on the point here. Red have taken out Slycore, so he's gone. They've got their mine point back, and we do have a 2v2. Liber is plagued, which is letting Shirio move off point. Ticey's chasing him. We've also got Avateki down, but like behind the point. He's got Alex also trying to go for the res, but we've got Stereo and Surlius trying to make sure they keep that stays, the Ellie stays down there. But he may well get up. He does get stomped out. He is very close, very very close to getting up there, but he does go in the end, and that is going to swing the favor. Although again, we were just saying Ticey, another free decap, and with all the members of Red Team on the other side of the map, this is a free cap for him.
Yeah, this is a really good thing that Blue Team has been doing, is the fact that they've constantly had the communication barriers going up there. They've constantly been aware of their status in the team fights. Even though they might have not been in the best positions for winning team fights themselves, and Red Team might be taking advantages over them, they've always got Ticey on the move, and Ticey really knows his role. Ticey knows the fact that, alright, I'm not a big team fighter, I don't do a lot of DPS. If someone's low enough, I can sneak into a mid fight and try to close it out really quickly, like he's going to attempt to do with Dorito right now. But he knows that his main job is kind of quick support and back capping, and he's doing a fantastic job of that right now in this game.
We do have Alex gone down, so Avateki's the only one left on Henge, so this one should go back in favor of Red. But again, they're just, they're rotating very well. Slycore's going to get mid here with Jurita going down. They are really taking advantage. Ticey doing very well to get, moving from point to point. But Jurita's going to get up thanks to the Shadow Refuge. Oh, no, he's not. He was like one tick away from getting up, but Stereo had to move off. And that is going to let Nivo and Ticey get that kill. And Stereo might well go down trying to get him up as well. That's very dangerous from him.
And as we take a look back up in mid there as well, we got Slycore and Ticey now should be able to force off the remaining members of the red side. Red side's going to try to redouble their efforts back over here in the mine, but due to the fact that they saw this coming, more than likely Ellie should be able to hold off the 1 versus 2 for just a couple extra seconds, and the rest of the blue team are on their way now to reinforce this one. So as long as they hold on to this fight, looking at the scoreboard as well here, this might be GG. However, Alex did screw up there a little bit. He got feared off the node and got killed out there by the red side thief, so they are going to get a decap. And if there was ever a chance
down as
team,
well.
yeah, if there was ever a chance for the red side to get back in, it's going to be now. But they've got to defend Stereo and make sure they get Elix killed, which unfortunately is not going to happen. As we see Stereo go down and Elix gets back up, blue team should be in a pretty good spot now to reinforce this fight and possibly get the cap back under their wing as well.
Celeste here just doing his, utmost to try and move away from the point. He got stuck far too close to the team fight there. And he's, 500 health, and he does in fact go down there. So he's dropped, Dorita's dropped as well. We've got Shurio moving into mid, and Liba's down as well. So this team fight has gone horribly for red on this point over here. And, I think you're right. Again, it's a case of it's quite a risky comp that they're playing, and it's not working out for them.
Yep, boss steal is the only chance they have, but they don't have anyone in a position to take that. And as well as we take a look at the players that were just killed out, even if they did get that boss kill, they're still about 25 points ahead, and they've got a 2 cap. So game 1 definitely will go into the favor of the blue team here, which I believe will put them only 1 more game away from moving on to the next round in the tournament.
Yep, so that will move that. I believe I won't be too presumptuous if I change the scores already. So we'll change that one. So that is, 1-0 for blue team. So that puts Don't Know What to Do up 1-0, and we will be moving on to Legacy of the Faux Fire now. A map that, the Power Ranger might have some luck in that map.
Yeah, Power Ranger is definitely going to be more useful there. There's actually a couple of dynamics that do put things into the favor of the red side as we head to map number 2 here. One thing is just going to be the layout of the map is going to make it a lot harder for Ticey to score back caps. This is definitely something that red team does need to adjust for, and the fact that they weren't doing too good of a job of paying attention to those attempts at back caps that Ticey was constantly doing. Like, I don't think Ticey really ever failed at an attempt at a back cap, so they do need to be doing a better job at watching that home point. However, thankfully, because it's on Legacy, that job becomes a lot easier because the map layout is a lot more straightforward. There are a lot less ways to kind of LOS sneak around and score a point. Like on that last map, you have the beach, you have the middle area, and there's a lot of ways to kind of sneak behind your opponents, especially if there's a big fight happening at mid or something. It's very easy to sneak around, get that other back cap. It's not really the case here on this map, so hopefully they'll have a much easier time with dealing with Ticey. But on the reverse side of things too, blue side I think was doing a lot better of adjusting to when things kind of went awry. So if they don't take that initial mid fight, I think that they're going to be having a much easier time of fighting, just in general adjusting and trying to go for a side no post. Also, just keep in mind too that I do think that they actually have the better team fighting comp. So when it comes to that initial mid fight, they're assuming that they don't screw up and lose an Ivy or Ticey early on. They should maybe be able to take the opening 2 cap here, and that'll put them in a pretty good position to hold on to things as well.
Yep, I do believe we have the blue team warrior Slycore is restarting game due to lag, so we will give him a couple of minutes just to get in here. So obviously, with this being an amateur tournament, we are hoping to bring in new viewers that might be new to the map. I think as well we have also, has it happened again? As Stereo, I think we've got some red guys spawned in the blue guy base. Yeah, it has happened again. I don't know why that happens on this map, but it seems to be happening a lot lately. But anyway, we do have sort of special features on this map, I guess. In terms of, we've got the lords that are going to be over in these corners over here, and over here, and killing them will grant you 150 points. So that is, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic for this match, especially with the with the DPS the red team have in terms of the Power Ranger and the Thief, and even the Necro in terms of keeping in the fears and stuff. That it's a comp that might well do very well if they can get to that Lord Rush.
Yeah, definitely. But it seemed like we talked about before, they've got a nice amount of DPS. Ticey, obviously, too, doing a very good job with the back caps there. So overall, blue team is looking very strong heading into map number 2. But on the reverse side, as I explained earlier, because of Surlius now, if he continues to play the Power Ranger on this map, Power Ranger is going to be really good, especially on mid. But they do need to do a much better job at defending them, especially when it comes to Ticey. Tycee is going to absolutely destroy Surlius if he's able to get directly onto him, especially in the position that Surlius is currently at, where this is more likely where he'll be fighting at the midpoint. So if Tycee can get easy access to Surlius, and that's going to eliminate him, and again, make it very hard for the red team to actually close out those mid-fights without him.
Yep. We should hopefully have some ready up, so what are we waiting for? We're still ready, waiting for a lot of them. 4 from blue and 3 from red, so I'll just prompt them again. Nobody ever readies up quickly for game 2. I don't know why it is.
Could possibly just be strategizing and whatnot.
Yeah. Now this one's going to be definitely going to be interesting because you know you're right. Blue team have a nice comp, but the DPS from red, at the very least, you know you're right. Surlius, you know Tycee's going to have good pressure on Surlius for the game, but I'm hoping that we're at least going to see a very exciting opening from red team. Their DPS out of stealth is going to be very good. We're still waiting for lots of them again. Hopefully Slygore's fixed his lag. He does seem to be moving around okay. Got some. Aha, just 1 guy from red and 2 from blue.
It's also going to be, to add more kind of context to the situation here, it's also going to be a little bit harder for Liber to perform on this map too, just because Necro is not as large of a range as some of these other players, and again, with how risky the Necro can be in terms of playing it, they've really, like, this is what I talked about at game 1, and it's going to become even more relevant here on game 2, just because of how big the midpoint is and how much harder it is to fight for that. Liber's got to be really careful, because obviously we'll have Tycee putting the pressure over on Surlius up on the ledge, and they might have to fall back to defend him, but then that'll leave Liber open, and Liber as well has to get even closer to the actual engagement. So blue team, I think the main bulk of the blue team is going to be looking to take out Liber, just because he's going to have to stick a lot closer to the team fight, and overall he's going to be a lot more accessible than, say, Surlius will be. But still, they've got to make sure that they keep both of those guys defended, as on their own, if they get into 1v2 scenarios, there's not much they can do to get people off of them.
Yep, and we do have the match going now, so it is going to be don't know what to do against, or Succulent Sensations against don't know what to do. I guess we should stick with their colours. So it is 1-0 to don't know what to do at the minute. So this is game 2, so if don't know what to do win this game, they will go through to the final. Succulent Sensations win, we do go on to a game 3. A map that is very rarely seen. And we do have, again, it looks like a relatively defensive split here from blue team, sending 3, including all of their DPS, towards their home node. Anticipating a push from red that you have to imagine, but red again splitting very defensively as well. 3 in mid, 2 on home. They've got all of their DPS on their home node as well, which means mid is going to be very much a sustained fight here right now.
Yeah, and obviously the resurgence will come in just a second, but that's a pretty normal opener at the current time. A lot of people are used to fire pushes that directly at the start and attempts to steal those nodes away, as the mid fight can obviously be very long and drawn out. So I think that was a pretty usual opener, not anything too out of the ordinary. They were sending both the DPS home in an attempt to defend it against a possible Zerg rush from either side. Didn't happen on either side, but again, with us having all 4 Sully players in mid, not much is going to happen there either until we now have the reinforcements coming in. And kind of no surprise, we've got the pressure going on the Liber, and not a lot of defense on Liber, so they've got to watch out for that pretty early pop of the play form. Thankfully, the other members of the red team are making progress, as they did see Naiva go down, but they've got to be careful of Liber now, as she's taking a lot of DPS. He does get banned
as well.
Yep.
Naiva does get
Banner
banned.
was just used too.
So that is going to get him back up, but he's going to drop immediately again off point. He does have Avateki here to go for the hard res, but that poison is on him, and he does have Stereo and Shurio here trying to get that up. Stereo himself is going to go down now, so now it is Nivo does get up, and this is swinging in favor of blue team very quickly now. Surliest as well, also very low, getting feared off point, so you're right, all of their DPS, Surliest and Liber again, both being focused very heavily.
Yeah, Tycee did get taken out there, though. Nicely done by Surlius in making the best of a bad situation. Knocked him directly into the fight and kind of into the lion's mouth, essentially, there, as they made very quick work of him. Tycee go down. There was a player from the red side that was down for a moment, but he's been rezzed up pretty quickly. And yeah, it's looking like the red side is going to wrap things up here at middle pretty quickly with that last assistance coming in from Surlius to take out Naivu. And it's going to take them actually a few minutes to eliminate these other guys, but this gives them a lot of options now too, and you can already see evidence of this is now pretty unlike the last game. We'll see Stereo push over to the far point. We were used to seeing Ticey do this a lot in game 1, but now Stereo will come in, and he'll be the first player to attempt to decap. And you can note too that if you look kind of just off the quarry there, the Ranger from the red side, Surliest, is already ready for Ticey. They've very much so learned their lesson from the previous game, and they're not going to be so keen as to let Ticey go for those decaps a lot again here.
Just stays in his shadow refuge as he was pushed down, so that was quite lucky for him. Avateki keeping that, getting waterfall back, and we've got this. Although it does look like he's let go. He's let go of Ticey this time.
Just like that.
Always got to be careful of that option there. They almost knocked him out of his SLR too. That was almost very well played by Surliest in knocking him out, but unfortunately there was some very nice play there from Ticey himself and putting that SLR right up against the wall to ensure that that did not happen. And unfortunately to Surliest, thinking that he would go back to his teammates to reinforce, considering that he thought Ticey was so low, he did make that kind of over-assumption on that. And now we've seen Ticey go back over there, get the decap, and now he's got a pretty nice edge in a fight versus Surliest. But that nice number 2 ability there on Longbow is going to turn that around very quickly, as now Ticey will be put onto the defensive as well, and Shurio fall back over towards the corner.
Liber is going to get very close to dropping here. He's taken out Slycore, but he's had to get right into the point to do it. So he is really running the risk of going down on point here. Although Avateki does go down as well, so that is a lot of their sustain of blue team gone down. Ticey's going for the res, and he's not going to get it. Very close to getting it there. Well noticed by Surliest to get that longbow 5 down on top of him.
Ticey's trying really hard to try and take out Surliest here, and unfortunately it's just not going. So I would say he's almost focusing too much on that. He needs to try some other options here, as although he's doing a nice job of keeping that harassment on him, but at the same time he's not really benefiting his own team. We're not seeing any decaps coming out from him this game. We've seen that once so far, but beyond that, it's already much lower than what we've seen on the previous map on Forest. And I think he just needs to look into some other options, like he's doing now, and try not to focus so hard on clearing that one target, as obviously it's not really working out so well, and the progress is not really being made on killing Surliest.
Naivu has gone for the 1v1 against Surliest, but Doritos had to come back to back him up because Surliest was losing that engagement. He's been able to back off point now, be able to get back into longbow range, and that's going to take out Naivu very quickly, so Surliest can move off. That was some great rotation there by Red, a lot better than we saw from them last game. And Liber's had to move off Waterfall. They did briefly manage to get the full cap on this point, but we do have both Ellies who are still hanging around together a lot more than I think we thought they would be.
Did you see that?
Ticey as well. Got to the mid-fight temporarily. Kind of thought that the mid-fight was lost. Aveteki's just going to go and dive into that, though, and what is essentially a 1 versus 4. He's only going to have 3 players putting pressure on him, but that's going to be an absolute massacre there in the favor of the red side. It'll take Aveteki out. SR from Ticey will temporarily save his life, but there needs to be a more concise push here, as this is still only going to end with the red team getting more kills. It might have just been better for them to fall back and regroup, because now this is going to transition into a pretty sloppy mid-fight unless they can turn things back around, and Ticey along with their other DPS player, that being Captain Nivu, can perform well here in mid. They do have Liber pretty low, but they've got to move quickly, as already now we've seen Captain Nivu go down, and that pressure is going to immediately shift onto Ticey or one of the Ellies in just a moment.
200 health there, yeah, Liber goes down as well. Alex comes in, although he does get the immediately rally off Captain Nivu there. Stereo Electro was moved back into mid here. He did go get another decap on Waterfall, so he seems to have learned from Ticey's performance in game 1, and he is on the ball with those decaps. Surliest in this map being able to hang out sort of on top of mid here. He's not being fooled by Ticey this game really.
And you can see this as well. This is making the world of a difference when it comes to just the mid-fights, too, with us seeing those constant decaps coming out from Stereo. Because Stereo is pulling that off, it's constantly pulling an Ellie or another support player off of the mid-fight, and it's just allowing the red team to constantly keep control of that mid-fight. They don't even really have to push the bulk of their team over towards the far point, because they just have such good control with Ellies or other support players constantly being pulled back through the decaps that we're seeing Stereo pull off. And speaking of which, another one's going to attempt to come off right now, and it's going to connect there. He does take a large amount of DPS from Captain Nevo there, I believe, but Dorita's there to help out, and it looks like they may commit to this one. Now, this is going to be a bit of a risky choice, just because of the fact that if things go bad here, that's going to transfer over onto the midpoint, and they will probably lose control of the midpoint. But at least for now, it seems they've got things handled. They even took Ticey down, so if they can keep it in a position like that for the
Avateki gets banned on mid as well, so Avateki is still 2v1 with Liber and Surliest, although Surliest had to go back. Slycore's gone to push onto Quarry, but Avateki did get the banner from Slycore, so that's keeping this into a 1v1. But it's a very low Ellie against the Necro there, so that is going to be in favor of the Necro. Although Liber's going to go down to Ticey, getting that res off on, trying to get that res off on stereo. You know, that was a pretty good move from Slycore there. He didn't get the decap, but he did pull Surliest away from that 1v, that 2v2 that they had. So that pulled a lot of that DPS away, and Avateki has actually regened and is back alive, and now they're winning this mid fight.
And then if you take a look back over here at the waterfall as well, Blue team has actually done a pretty nice job of turning this back around. Red side definitely did a very good job of stalemating things here, and considering that as we take a look back over at mid, that the fact that they've still got control there for the most part is pretty good too. Actually, at the end of the day, even though we've seen Red team lose control of the waterfall, they put enough pressure on that point to keep it decapped for, I don't even know how long, I would say about 2 to 3 minutes, and they haven't lost any caps on the way, so this is actually going to be beneficial to them, despite the fact that they have, for all intents and purposes, lost that mid fight, or that far point fight.
And we do have Surliest. Again, they've got stereo, and Ticey is keeping the pressure on Surliest. He's having to move off point. He's very close to going down. He's been refuged by stereo, so that should keep him out. But with 2,000 health left, he's going to get that heal off in another second, so he should be able to come back into that fight. Especially out of stealth, he might be able to get some big DPS on... Oh, no, Ticey's already back in mid, so they're going to have the DPS Slycore to get this point back now. So they should win that back relatively quickly. Again,
yeah,
Red...
Slycore should be...
Sorry, you carry on.
I was just gonna say Slycore is gonna be a really easy kill, so Red team will mop that up nice and easy. They actually got control of the waterfall back here as well, so they've got that under their control once again as they've stolen that away from the blue team. And beyond that, I mean, right now, Red team is just doing a fantastic job of controlling the map. Blue team, they've been trying really hard to find an opening to work their way into, but even when they've gotten these 1 or 2 caps, rotations away to that to make progress on another node, it just hasn't been there. Unfortunately, they haven't really been able to push into that, and that's just because Red team's been doing a fantastic job with the rotations here.
Ticey did get a very good res off on Slycore there on Quarry, so they have brought this back into a 2v2 again, but they're just... Slycore's going for the cap, allowing Ticey to just be taken out, you know, with absolutely no pressure from... he'd rather get the cap than keep that fight going at that point. And now, but he's going to be 2v1 again against Surliest and Stereo, and he doesn't have that Shadow Refuge to get him back up this time.
And as we take a look at some of the other fights that are going on back in mid there, obviously things are looking okay for the Red side. They did lose Shurio, so this might be their opportunity for the blue team to turn it back around against them now. As you see Alex getting low, though, so they're going to have to get Alex out. But now with Libra going down and Alex in a safe position, so long as Libra gets stomped out, blue team should be looking pretty good to maybe wrestle back control.
Jurich is going for the res, so... No, he's pulled off the res, so Libra is going to get bled out here. Surliest is back into this fight, engaging... So they've let Stereo's come in for the... cap, but he's actually going to go down before Slycore, and he's gone down, so we can't even get Slycore out. So Stereo, no, Slycore does manage to bleed out due to AoE, some AoE damage there. Stereo is going to go down again, and Blue are going to keep control of this quarry, and they do have the outer caps now.
Yep, we've got Dorito heading back over there. Dorita, rather, not Dorito. Oh my goodness, that was a terrible misname there. I apologize. But Dorita is going to fall back over here towards the waterfall. He's got a pretty decent fight going up against Ticey over here. Ticey, if he plays this properly, can kill Dorita in a very long and drawn-out engagement. But as you're seeing, he has to get off-node a lot. And if he continues to fight this, going to end up with Dorita at getting the full cap hero just over time. So the best option right now for Ticey would be to fall back from this. I know that they're really trying hard to defend their caps, but they really need to focalize themselves if they want to have any chance of getting back into this game now. Try to get a nice cap over here, maybe at the quarry. It seems to be their best bet, and then push that over onto the midpoint. That's really one of their only chances right now, and even so, those chances are very slim, just because now the red side is just under 60 points away from winning this game.
They did finally manage to take Surliest out there, so he is on respawn, and Blue are going to get quarry back. But Red are getting Waterfalls, so again, it's going to stick with a 2-cap for Succulent Sensations, and it does look like we're actually going to be going to a game 3 here. With 450 to 226, you have to imagine this is probably good to put as a Red win. But I suppose we have seen bigger comebacks than this on this map, so we'll have to see. I think we even have a solo Lord push here from Blue, just to try and get some points there. Was that Avateki's pushing in on that? Yep, Avateki's pushing in for the solo Lord rush.
I think Avateki's just trying to give us a little bit of a show here at the end, but I don't believe that he's going to make any progress on killing this Lord, especially considering he's got less than 10 seconds now to pull it off. So, with that being said, I think it's safe to say now that we'll be tied 1-1 and being pushed into a game 3. These guys over here on the red side are going to wrap things up pretty nicely and put themselves into that tied position to take us over to the Battle of Kylo.
Which will be fun to see, because like I said at the start, we've only ever had one Game 3 before. It was last week, so games are starting to get a little bit closer. So this will be our second time ever seeing Kylo. I believe, in fact, Don't Know What to Do were in the last match that featured on Kylo as well, so they like to play this map, I think. So this will be the second time that we featured Kylo and the second time that we featured Don't Know What to Do. It's not a map that many people seem to like, from what I can tell just from talking to people. I don't really know why that is, whether it's the clock tower with the sort of verticality and all that lot, or the trebs, or what it is, but...
Yeah, clock tower is the main reason that I've talked to teams that don't like fighting on this, just because of the fact that clock tower is for most teams, or at least for squishier players, it's an incredibly stupid point to fight on.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that you either have to stay directly on the point itself and take a huge amount of DPS, or you're not going to be doing anything. Like enemies and whatnot can sort of stand on the catwalks over on the side outside of the clock tower and throw in grenades and whatnot, but in order to do any real impact, you have to go into that very small area. It's in fact the complete opposite of Legacy, as to where you have that very large midpoint. Forest is a little bit more even, because while, again, you do have the same size midpoint that you do have here on clock tower, you can still kind of stand slightly off the point and contribute just as much. But here on the clock tower, because of the way that it's positioned on this higher platform, you need to actually go onto the point itself, or at least stand kind of on these two edges where the ramps are, in order to really contribute to the team. And that makes it a lot harder for teams that have a higher amount of squishy players to contribute. Another thing to keep in mind here is that Liber is probably going to have a lot of trouble fighting on this map on a Zakani Necro. She's going to be okay on the side nodes, especially when we do see the trebs used and the roof goes off and he can stand kind of on the raised portions over there. But when it comes to fighting on the side nodes, you take a look there, and again, Necros rely pretty heavily on an elevated position in general, being out of the way of opponents in order to perform properly. When you take a look at both of the side nodes, there's really none of that. It's a completely flat and open area, so that's going to make it a lot harder for Liber, and I would say the same for Surlius too, if he decides to stay on a Power Ranger here. Both those guys are going to be having a little bit of trouble performing on the side nodes, and that does put, at least in my opinion, this matchup a little bit more favored towards the blue side. So we're going to have to see how they work with that, and how they hopefully try to overcome that on this map.
Yep, we do again have Cycle, I believe, has actually restarted his entire PC this time. Still suffering from some lag, so we're gonna see if we can get rid of that. So we are gonna have to wait another minute or so. Hopefully it won't be too long. But again, in your opinion, you know, if you were judging these two teams, which comp do you think is better suited for this map specifically then?
Blue team is pretty highly, just because of the fact that red team has a lot of disadvantages working against them, as I just explained with the Ranger and the Necro being really only able to contribute too well in mid. I mean, the Ranger can still do actually pretty good on the side points. It's just that he's a lot more open on the side points. It's kind of like a reverse thing, as to where he can do okay of keeping himself alive on mid, but he may not be able to perform as well because there's a lot more LOS on the midpoint. But then as you go over towards the side nodes, he can get his DPS off a lot more reliably because of how open it is, but because of the fact that it's an open and flat field, there is like no defense for him either besides his own teammates, so he needs to be careful of that too. And again, the same thing is kind of true for the Necromancer, so that already puts them in a bit of an awkward position. Whereas with the blue side, you've got Ticey, you've got a lot of mobility coming out from the guys on the blue side, and overall, with them running the 3 Celestial Focus players instead of the 2 Celestial Focus players on the red side, it also makes the blue team just a little bit more better suited to fighting on the midpoint for longer periods of time, because they have that higher sustainability across the board.
Alright, so we'll have to see. Let's just have a quick check, see if we've got any changes. We do have, still got the Power Rangers, so they can, the one thing that I have seen Power Rangers do is that they can hit midpoint from very, very far away. They can be on the side points and just, you know, stand on one of those houses near the edge of on the side points and hit up into mid, so they don't even need to be anywhere near the fight. So Shorio is staying on his Warrior, Jarita still playing Dagger. Yep, no changes. Dagger pistol we've had. So we do actually have, you know, one of each sort of popular thief here with the sword dagger and the dagger pistol. Again, just to kill some time. Do you have a preference in terms of thief build? Do you think one is more, I guess, more valuable than another in a comp, or is it all about what sort of, you know, do they both have their place in certain comps?
DP for life. No, but more seriously talking, Dagger Pistol, I personally like to see Dagger Pistol more just because I think it has a higher skill ceiling. And I think that there's a lot more that can be done with Dagger Pistol compared to SD, but SD, they kind of fulfill different roles. In essence, both of them are backcappers. Both of them have the job of being the backcapper, because they both get generally the same mobility when they're running with a short bow. And obviously just about being thieves. But the big difference comes into play in how they actually perform in a combat, and that is that SD is much more of a stalemater, SD is much more of a 1v1er, and really just an annoyance to the enemy team, whereas Dagger Pistol is much more of a team fighter. Dagger Pistol is much more, essentially it's the closer. It comes in when people are low enough, and it performs that big, huge damage combo to take people to the downstate, and then it can do a nice amount of corpse cleave with short bow as well, assuming that there isn't enough pressure for them to where the thieves could actually stay in that mid fight. SD doesn't really have a huge amount of DPS. It can if he's getting lucky with sigil procs, but it relies pretty heavily on the sigil procs in order to do significant DPS. Other than that, it's a lot less when you compare it to the SD, or when you compare it to the DP rather. So SD is a lot more sort of a stalemater and more of an annoyance to the team fight, and overall focuses a lot more on backcaps and supporting sort of 2 versus 1s that'll be happening on side nodes, whereas DP can focus a lot more on the mid fight and help out with closing out killing players.
Alright, so Slycor is coming back in, so we will just, he's getting back in, so we will just get everybody to ready up. And we will move into a game 3. Again, I guess we should just briefly talk about some of the mechanics of this map. We did briefly mention the trebuchet, very powerful tool when it actually hits. Obviously it can be dodged, so it's not a surefire thing, but it's huge point pressure and can really swing that mid fight. Especially it can hit the side nodes as well, but most often you'll see it swinging that team fight into a certain direction. Whether it gets used or not is something else, because a lot of teams, you know, will use it once and then leave it, or you know, only use it sort of as needed. But we've got the splits coming here again.
Yes, let's take a look here with the gates opening up in 1 second.
Hold on to your points.
It's going to take a couple seconds for us to see splits, but right now, not looking like anything too out of the ordinary. We are going to see, just as a note, blue team will use their treb, but I think they're only going to use it to open things up. I don't think they're actually going to use it to actually perform on midpoint, and no far overreaching pushes just as of yet. You do want to know that Stereo already has a lock on to the blue side thief. So that's going to be pretty important coming to the mid fight. Is that already put pressure on a Tyc, and these two are probably going to be dueling for a few minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, Stereo is putting. Slycor's been feared off point by Liber here, so he is. Although Stereo got caught too close to the point there, and is very close to going down himself. We've got all of the DPS again here in mid. So Tyc getting focused. Stereo has gone down, but Tyc is also going to go down. So it's all about who can get the stomp and or res here. It does look like we've got a mass res going on here by everybody. Oh, and in fact we get Shurio banners Stereo, so that gets him up. Tyc's down. Tyc's probably going to stay down. Shurio's very close to going down as well, though.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Slycor could have gone for the res there. And keep in mind too, Slycor technically still has the banner, I believe. They want to use that, but I don't think they're going to use that on their thief this way. I would have even disagreed a little bit with Shurio's choice to use it to get their own thief back up. But I mean, at the end of the day, it seems to have worked out pretty nicely for them. They do still have to close out this mid fight, but now they've got to make use of that banner now, because they did choose to use it pretty early for a thief. Normally, when you use that for a tankier player to sort of keep a team fight going for a lot longer, but if they're able to perform this well enough and close out this mid fight, it's definitely going to be worth it.
We did see briefly there, Liber did actually push towards Mansion as well, dragged Avateki back with him, which took some more sustain out of this mid fight. He didn't win the fight, he did get very low, so he's pulled back in towards mid. Shurio again he's gonna have to start kiting soon. They are gonna lose this mid cap if he doesn't, if he can't regen. And again we've got the Tyc was going for the decap and has pulled Dorita, so again we've got some good decaps or attempted decaps coming out from both sides here.
Yeah, and it really stinks too, at least for Tyc and the thieves in general here, is that the thieves are going to have such a hard time in mid just because of the fact that it's such a close fight, and it's such a close quarters fight, and with this them going into the mid fight and trying to deal DPS, that in itself is going to be a huge risk. So the fact that the thieves are just not able to get decaps out right now really has to be hurting them, because now they're forced to fight in mid essentially, and that is not where thieves want to be on this map in my opinion. Yeah,
Surliest has decided that mid fight was lost, and he's pulled up for the decap on Mansion, but Avateki is also getting decap on Windmill, so we are going to double decap both side points again. We're going to have Surliest against Alex here on Mansion in a 1v1 temporarily anyway. Avateki might work nice. Oh, he's going to be very close. No, I was going to say he almost got the decap there. I think there was a a weird port back from one of the red team players there, and Stereo's actually dropped. Niveau's popped onto point, and we do have a 3v2 with Liber respawning. They're going to try and get Stereo up, but this is not how they wanted this to go for a red team. They really needed Stereo to stay up there.
Yeah, they need to get out of here now, too, because it's only going to get... Actually, no, I take that back. I thought this was far point, so they should still be able to continue fighting here, but they definitely need some more reinforcements if they want to keep things going. This is going to get pretty bad pretty quickly as they... Like, Dorita's here, but unfortunately, Liber, as I talked about before, Liber's an open book, essentially, when it comes to taking her down, especially now with the elimination of that other thief pressure. So Liber, thankfully, realizes this and is going to attempt to get away, but you've got that chase coming out from Avediki now. The respawn is up from the other red team player, and will come in to attempt to support with only 800 HP outside of that. Stereo needs to do some huge pressure now and force Avediki to get away. As even with that heal coming off from Liber, that is not going to be a huge amount, and I think Liber still may end up in the down state
as well. Surliest and Shuri are both stumped out there, and Alex is getting that point back. And Liber and Stereo are both down again, so blue team look like they're going to take a very early, very quick control of this map.
As we check out some of the other action that's going on, it's really all coming down essentially at the moment to what's happening over here at the windmill, and unfortunately for the red side, just not really able to break through at the moment, as everyone from the blue team is essentially shifting their pressure over here to try and keep the red side locked in. This is a good strategy, but they've got to keep in mind, and I want to say it was actually red team that made this mistake, so hopefully the blue team is not going to fall prey to the same issue, but they've just essentially got to be careful of red team trying to go for back caps. It does look like they've got that under control, though. I like Alex's position at the moment. He's kind of hanging out between both of those nodes, as you see there, so he's running out, as we're going to see Liber coming in to attempt to decap the mansion, and they've already got the other thief falling back to defend the midpoint there, too. So I was worried there a little bit with them putting so much pressure on the far point that they weren't going to be able to defend those other two nodes, but it seems they've made up for that very nicely, and they're going to be able to not only keep this fight going at the windmill, but defend the other two nodes as well.
Surliest is going to drop as well to Ticey there, so Ticey's going to win that fight, going to get the stealth safe stomp, and that is going to keep this in good control. Red team are going to get mansion with Stereo coming in and taking out Alex, but Ticey's coming in. Whether we have, we do have a Shadow Refuge here. Is he going to be able to get him up in time? It's going to be close, I think.
Poison's really going to hurt here. They can definitely get him up. It's going to take a really long time. Thankfully they do, though. And thankfully Stereo should have been able to cleave there with Sherpo, but I'm not sure if he just didn't know where they were or he just didn't want to feel like going for that. But yeah, that Stereo kind of let them res there. Had he have been going in and had he have gone for the cluster bomb pressure, he might have been able to stop that from happening. So that's going to be a free res now that blue team gets off, and he'll be able to escape away from that point because of that too.
Yep, and red team are going to be able to push in towards this midpoint. They do have the DPS to go with this. Surliest getting a bit of free casting off here off the ledge, getting that entangle off. A very powerful elite on what is a relatively low cooldown for such a powerful skill. Avateki's dropping off, and that is gonna give them the decap on mid. So we do have both Eddies here again. Both Eddies again hanging out together. We've got a 2v1 here on Mansion with Liber has had to go plague against Niveau and Ticey. Surliest is coming in, as is Stereo. So we are gonna have again all of the DPS here on Mansion, keeping this point contested. And are they going to get Liber up? They are going to get Liber up.
We've got a nice amount of pressure coming off here too between Ticey and Captain Naivu. I'm actually pretty surprised that they were able to survive this long, considering it was a 3v2, so nicely played off by Naivu and Ticey. But unfortunately now, with them getting that third player back up from the grave there, they've got to get themselves out of here. Naivu will be under a lot of pressure from, it looks like, the Power Ranger on the red side. And thankfully, once again for the blue team, there won't be a lot of pressure in the reverse side coming out there from the red side, so they will be able to escape that one pretty much unscathed. And now reinforce the mid-flank, as those remaining red team players are also looking like they're going to be pushing on to this point too.
Trio got very low, they had to cut off point. Surliest did come in to replace him, but again we've got a lot of blue members on this midpoint again, and Shurio is really being relied on to stay on points far longer than he should be. He needs to get away and get some, get that passive warrior regen, get some of that off. And again, Ticey is back to his usual business, getting those decaps again.
Yeah, this is very much so similar to what we had happen on the first map. It's a lot harder for Red Team to predict comings from Ticey compared to on Legacy, where it was very obvious when he was going to try to go for those decaps. So it's making it a lot harder this time around for the red side to predict these, and we're seeing a lot more decap action and a lot more side point action overall from Ticey here, and it's really making a huge difference. Right now, blue teams are doing a absolutely fantastic job with controlling this map.
They have got, Liber has actually gone down there as well, so we've got Stereo, Surliest and Dorita all on this midpoint, but Dorita is taking a lot of focus there. Down to 1000 health basically, and they do go down. Ticey gets them down. Surliest trying to get some damage. They're not going for the res. They're just going to let Dorita bleed out. Stereo's dropped on point as well. A lot of AoE pressure coming from blue team, and you have to imagine they're probably going to pick up this cap again. They are in fact going to tick back over. Liber might well get the decap on Mansion. It depends whether Nivo and Ticey can get in time. It's going to be close.
Should be able to port to this one. He can pop a port and get up there really quickly.
Yeah,
He's gonna,
there we go.
oh, let's see that fear. Oh, almost fears him off. But thankfully for Naivu, we saw a chill come off from Liber, and that actually made the fear not run him off the point, which allowed him to keep the cap there. So actually, I mean, obviously Liber didn't have much control over that, but still, because of the fact that we saw that chill go off, very unfortunate that the RNG actually works against Liber's favor there, and actually saves the cap for the remaining players on the blue team.
And blue are going to get this point, but they're pushing very heavily. Again, we've got Liber and Stereo trying to push back in, but those two aren't going to really be able to keep each other up or keep themselves up in this sort of scenario, especially with that much DPS and the Shout Warrior there. So that should be a comfortable victory for them. And we've got Shurio against Avateki here on mid, but with the reinforcements that should be coming from Mansion, you have to imagine he's not going to have much success there either.
Yeah, and as we're starting to get towards the sort of ending portion of the game here, or at least the late game, we're looking at blue team just under 80 points away now from claiming this one. Red team, I don't really think they're going to be able to make this comeback happen. They're still about 300 points behind their opponents now, and like overall here, I think the biggest issue that red team suffered from is that they
have
focused
actually had a
heavily on
GG as well
point.
from red there.
Yeah, we
as
have
well.
had the GG called. So I think the biggest issue from red side this game was they focused too heavily on singular points, and they tried to diversify themselves and spread out just way too late in the game. Not only this, but when it came to actually splitting themselves up, most of the times we saw blue team just having better man placement and better rotations overall. Their blue team was doing an absolutely fantastic job with the rotations. Ticey really made up for what was happening there in the last game, as he was really unable to perform that well on Legacy, but he's more than made up for it here on this map. It's just all over the place. And the Thief, really, in my opinion, the Thief can make or break this map for either team. If your Thief is doing a great job getting around, ganking where he should, and getting those decaps, then he can be an absolute monster. And the reverse can be said if he's not pulling that off, and it can essentially make it almost a 4v5 there. But Ticey was doing an absolutely great job of doing that job and just rotating himself around to where he needed to be and performing extremely well. And I think he was probably one of the main reasons why we saw blue team do so well there and was able to take that round.